being the last session, of a two-day event is always partially onerous. I guess we're the only folks standing between you and a fun evening, awards, and all the good things. But I promise, and I had the opportunity to chat with all the panelists a little before the session, that this will be interesting and engaging. And primarily because of two reasons. I think one, we've got a nice diversified panel. Right, so I've got on the far right, Datta, who's the Chief Digital Officer of Jindal Steel. Right, so this is a traditional legacy manufacturing company, and we'd love to hear his perspective on how Gen AI and Web 3.0 is actually translating in the steel business. Then we have Mohan Srinivasan from Sony Pictures, and I think he's doing something pretty interesting in a space that, let's say, a lot of us which touch our lives, right? So the whole business of entertainment, and that's very interesting. Then I've got Vatsal, and Vatsal's 100x VC, and has a great overview of all the new and exciting things that are happening in the space of Gen AI. His pre-seed and early stage investment firm has actually made sizable investments in this space. So therefore, he has a kind of insider's view, if I may, of the entire ecosystem. And of course, finally have Rama from GMR. So he's right in the vicinity of the Delhi airport, which GMR runs. And we'd love to hear from him on some of the areas that, how this whole thing is going to experience common consumer lives. I'm going to kickstart with Indra. And really want to understand, Indra, in the context of steel manufacturing. Right? This is an age-old industry. We've seen steel has been manufactured forever. How are you guys at Jindal Steel using this whole, shall we say, this whole Gen AI, this whole Web 3.0, which is still evolving, in terms of getting better results?
Thanks for having me here. So Jindal Steel and Power has started its digital transformation journey through a program called Project Pragati. So we are advancing ourselves in each and every value cycle of the whole iron and steel making processes through digital interventions. So if you see from the mining and dispatch, where logistics is a big problem area, because there are a lot of bottlenecks there, we are trying to solve the whole turnaround time, the get-in, get-out processes through various digital interventions. Then coming to the traditional way of making iron through blast furnace route or DRI route, or even to the steel making processes, we are applying drone-based inspection. We are applying AI/ML technologies so that we can understand and analyze the images that are captured by the drone. And then we are also trying to put intelligence on top of it so that we are getting meaning and insight out of the data. And that is actually going to give a lot of value to our business users. And again, when we are talking about the finished products, whether it is flat products or a long products, which are coming out from the mills, so there are predictive analytics as well as any operator interventions, operator training through AR/VR technologies. All those things are part and parcel of our digital intervention journey that we have undertaken. Now coming to the particular question of Gen AI and how we can apply in our industry. So let me bring the macro picture here. I think industrial sector contributes around 25 to 28% of the GDP. And steel contributes around 2% of the whole GDP in India. Now Gen AI is a big productivity tool which is going to increase the productivity of each and every processes. Now, let's say when we are setting up a new plant, the whole CapEx cycle begins, right? Whether it is a CapEx cycle or even an OpEx cycle, the Gen AI has the capability to accelerate that cycle. Now, once the cycle is getting accelerated, you can see that the thousands and lakhs of crore of investment that is getting rolled into the process is becoming faster. So I will give a very particular use case how this project acceleration is possible through Gen AI. So let's say when we are floating an RFP, the RFP needs to go through the tendering process. The scope of work generation can be done through GenAI. The bids that are getting submitted by different vendors can be evaluated on different parameters through GenAI. The techno-commercial evaluation can happen through GenAI. So now you see the whole cycle of the project. Perhaps even if it starts, it takes around 3 to 6 months of time. If that cycle gets reduced to 1 to 1.5 months of time, then the whole ecosystem is moving faster. And that's where I think the productivity led by digital technologies is directly going to impact the GDP of our country. So maybe with that, I will take a pause here. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks for sharing that. So Raj, I'm coming across to you, and I think what Indra spoke about was really, in a sense, the efficiency and, let's say, the cost reduction that GenAI can bring into processes, and any process that becomes more efficient clearly works for all stakeholders in that. In the entertainment domain, right, where Sony is obviously a big player, how do you see the whole confluence GenAI with Web 3.0 radically changing the consumer experience?
I think similar to what Indra said, right? I think even before we go into any of these exponential capabilities being driven out, laying the foundation is very, very important, and that's very similar to what Indra said. Like we also gone through this, what we call as foundational capabilities. We also set out some 11 critical initiatives. As we speak, 9 has gone, and the other 2 are touchwood to go in another month's time. Now, while doing that itself, right, I'm a firm believer that, a medium term, short term, long term, everything has to happen at the same time, right? So some of these potential capabilities, be it for efficiency, like what you're saying, also for breakthrough revenue generation, we did toy around. Like we did come up with our own metaverse versions, and I'm sure you could imagine, right? Media and entertainment and this generative AI is actually very exciting stuff, right? Obviously, we did toy around. Obviously, we did put some of our good properties, like some of these sports properties, like the WWE, and even our some of the channels like the BBC Earth, where the viewing itself can actually experience. So all that we've done. Then finally the question comes, where's the money, honey, right? So that's where, if the next big things have to come, we've actually taken it on ourselves, right? Is there a breakthrough possible? Yes, it is possible, right? The conventional use cases like the fast channel, can I just make the content, the premium content? I'm sure, we can actually take pride in saying so much of premium content that we could actually house, leave alone going 2 decades, if I have to go even in 5 to 10 years, we will have good collection, right? How do I monetize it? Is it only always a long form, like, what you put on YouTube? And, like somebody in one of the sessions were saying, I'm making the more richer, right? How can I make myself more richer, right? There are some ideas, and I'm sure, I was also part of the panel. So we have spotted some good startups. We believe in the ecosystem way of growing. So the best way to inorganically grow. Direct answer to your question, is there something that we are trying to do something as a breakthrough to get actually see the money? Yes, we are looking for it, right? Because I'm a firm believer that, while people say that, how do you make money? Either through the ad spends or distributing our content, right? While the conventional market might seem like it is shrinking, it's growing. If you really see the CAGR of both these models are not shrinking. They're growing, they're not going into the conventional route to the market. And we know that it is going to the short form video or faster, rendering, or, even creating some new content without a post-production. All these are the technical gizmos that one can look at, and how they all come together to generate the business case as we speak. That's my big thing, right? That's the next big thing. There is a business case as we speak in a week or 2 weeks' time. We're also looking at putting together that blueprint, and we're going for it.
Thanks, Raj. I think that's a great overview, and I'm going to come back a little deeper
Sure.
to understand a little bit of the creator economy, since a lot of
Absolutely.
your core IP is great
Yes.
content.
Yes.
But we'll come back to you. I'm going to skip Vatsal for now to get to Rama next. And Rama, in the context of GMR, right? You guys run the largest airport in the country. How does this whole new space improve the consumer experience, right? What can be good about my whole transitioning through Delhi airport that you see can be a game changer in terms of the user experience?
Sure, and thanks. I think it's fun when we try to kind of talk about Web3 and digital asset crypto on one side, where it meets, say, AI, Gen AI, LLM, etc. So I think I'll start from what you asked in terms of passenger experience. I think I'll touch on some of the things that we may already be experiencing. Let's just take from DigiYatra, right? I think that's a thing where airports have come together, put together a next-gen system where it's a combination of video analytics, machine learning on one side, and amalgamating it with an Aadhaar UPI that already existed in the Indian ecosystem, and we have created an experience that doesn't exist anywhere. And to top it, most people don't know that it is powered at the back end by blockchain. And obviously, I mean, somebody asked me can you do it without blockchain? Sure. I mean, I can do it without blockchain. But the reason for that is to future-proof, where I can federate some of those data to multiple of the stakeholders, which are airports to begin with. And then some of the airlines, there was a gentleman in the previous panel. So federating it with airlines, with government entities, so that data is not a treasure trove of one party to begin with, and everybody has comfort. So I think there's a great real use case of blockchain that we kind of forget to mention, which is DigiYatra, right? A real life application. In terms of passenger experience, what else are we doing? We are trying to kind of marry the NFT digital asset on one side and create a wallet-based mechanism for loyalty, where I can create fungibility in terms of people who buy a whole bunch of things. There is commerce and transaction, and how do I create an ability to kind of treat the passenger differentiately, uniquely, and also provide him ways to kind of burn or redeem some of the things. And the third thing, and I think on dot Pankaj arrives, where we are trying to create a blockchain as a service along with Pankaj and IBC and IBF. And the idea is you would kind of think that why a BaaS service or blockchain as a service. The reason is simple. Blockchain everywhere goes around trying to find a solution where it doesn't exist, and we are cookie cut nicely for it, where there is multitude of stakeholders, airports like airlines, CISF, BCAS, immigration, multiple retail houses and stuff. And today we want to show how some of those can be married even at the back end in terms of air cargo, logistics and stuff. So I think we are kind of pushing forward. We are actually also bringing in non-private parties the Cargo Federation, Airport Authority also, if they play ball, and also showcase that India is a place where some of this new age technology can come melt, and as an example for the world to follow.
Terrific. That's heartening to know, Rama. Vatsal, coming to you, and 100x VC in a sense has got into the space pre the hype cycle, right? So long before this buzzword became common parlance, and we're having a whole 2-day event around it. And in that journey, what are the key elements that you're picking up which are going to be, in a sense, game changer? Where do you see a lot of the action around Web 3.0 and which generative AI can transform?
Yeah, thanks so much, Lloyd, for the question, and great to be here, everybody. So we've been investing in both Web3 and Gen AI for a long, long time. As partners, we've been investing in Web3 since the 2015-16 area. That back then it wasn't called Web3, it was just Bitcoin and then a whole bunch of other blockchains, and very, very different time. And AI especially, we've been investing since 2018 odd, so we have a long history of investing in these both spaces, right? We have a clear thesis for both of these spaces. On the Web3 front, we broadly delineate it as one side as investing only in Bitcoin as a pure kind of store of value asset and use cases around that. both in India and globally, and the other being the regular kind of Web3, where we focus largely on the Ethereum ecosystem and invest in applications built on top of Ethereum, right? Whether it's DeFi, whether it's real world assets tokenized, whatever it is. And on the AI front, we think of things in three possible verticals. One is so Gen AI core model innovation, Gen AI non-core innovation, and then non-Gen AI models, right? So Gen AI core model innovation, our thesis is, this is basically generation of any media type. So in that sense, we believe text and image has as a medium largely been won, right? With the models that already exist, it's going to be tough for anybody to beat in those particular mediums. We believe there are opportunities in 3D object generation, audio and video, even video to some extent, because it's an extension of image. It has a lot of momentum happening, but audio still remains to be seen as quality. And we've had exposure in this space, right? We've invested in a company like Vitra or a Vodex or Xylem or Croup AI, which are all doing core model innovation in these spaces. We also believe there's an opportunity in 3D object generation. So there we've invested in Metabricks, where these products would be helpful for your metaverse experiments, right? Where you want to create an object for the metaverse very rapidly. So that's the core model, right? Which is like deep tech innovation research. Then there's these other core models or core layer on or wrapper on top of core model businesses, right? There we kind of think of it as this. If it's just a simple wrapper on top of a model, say I'm just a GPT wrapper, there's no business here. There's no moat here, right? Unless you are selling the GPT part as a simple feature in your product, right? So having Gen AI integrating into your product is not a right to win, but it is a table stakes feature. Because your competitors are already going to do it, or you're going to do it. Once one of you does it, the other has to do it for sure, right? Now, if you do want to build a moat in this business, the opportunity is in the vector embeddings layer, which is basically how do you contextualize the model to a particular industry whose nuances are lost by a generalized model, right? So for example, for a hedge fund, certain keywords may make, let me give a very simple example. The word API means active pharmaceutical ingredient in pharmacy, and it means application programming information in tech, right? So knowing that context for a model is critical. And so creating that layer of the right context is where you can create some level of moat. So, right, and so the third opportunity is in other AI models, right? So obviously outside of Gen AI, there are a lot of AI innovations happening. Right. For example, we've invested in a company called Swasthi AI, which is giving incredible insights on top of cancer data, right? On what drugs are efficient, what are not, etc., etc. We've done a company called Filter Pixel, which is working with photographers to help them measure the quality, which is a qualitative measure, right? But they're quantifying that for photographers to say, okay, I've taken thousands of photos in a particular event, right? Like today, which are the top 100 photos, right? So those kinds of things. And those models, you have to really, really go deep into the performance of the model. Now it's improving, right? Every model has a certain metric associated which kind of measures the performance of the model. So how do you see that growing is very critical. So that's broadly how we think about these spaces.
Thanks for giving that, kind of detailed overview of how you approach it. And I'm going to quickly get on to Raj. And I think a little bit of what Vatsal mentioned. I think one aspect of Gen AI that we see is its ability to disrupt the creator economy, right? Historically, content creation was a domain. I mean, let's say if you rewind a couple of decades back, where you went to large production studios, right? And companies like Sony Pictures actually use state-of-the-art production techniques to create world-class quality content. I think what we've seen in the last 2 decades, and Gen AI has accelerated the pace, is the TikTokization, or maybe because TikTok's not in India, we'll talk about the democratization of content, where completely zero creative folks like me can also make great videos, right? You can just use. Vatsal spoke about Vitra, right? Vitra does real-time video translation, right? Or there's this other company called Jan AI, GAN, which can create personalized video communication. So I saw this fascinating, video where you can have a celebrity, pop up onto your WhatsApp and address you by name. Hi Ajay, did you watch last night's Wimbledon finals, so on and so forth. So a very customized personal message that also has your kind of location coordinates and tells you, hey, you can hop across to the nearest store and pick up your stuff. So in the context of a production company, say Sony Pictures, how do you see the creator economy disrupting production? You talked about improvements. I think one obvious one is the lowering the cost of production. Why would you need to go to a expensive studio to create this mega blockbuster when this can happen in somebody's backyard?
See, I'm going to be honest here, right? I mean, when you talk about a tech innovation and interventions, right? I think, as a tech group within the one, you can't be detrimental. If I go back and say, because we ourselves have a production house, right? If I'm saying, because you're not required, then it becomes a challenge. So, but what can we do? Like you said, right? Now, even before I go into democratization and making it into a larger where people can comment, I think what I can do for our own content library, right? If I can say that, look, what used to take you X for producing a content, right? Can I do it in, let's say, 1/10? Right? Now, the money saved is money earned, right? So those are certain things, yes. So then I'm not actually burning bridges, I'm not creating enemies. Same, the production guy is also going to help. Okay, so that you can start producing the classics so that's one intervention definitely we are looking at from creating that economy for our own economy improvement. Point number one. Once that gets into a scale, then you can think of, now that this platform is working, can I take it to the market, right? Can I make it like, see, if you say media and entertainment, while you may come up with the large players, 1 or 2 or 3 or whatever, right? But there are so many of them, right? There's so much regionalized content, creators, aggregators. Can I go and make a platform? Yes. So before going there, I would rather create it like an enterprise platform which benefits my own content creator economy, which justifies itself and stands on its own before it scales. So that's an honest answer. Now, having said that, are we not trying to look at the other disruptive things that we can look at it from a general market? Like I started with the first question itself, the market is not shrinking. It is going into the newer ways and newer things, right? How can I tap into it? Which is going to be an out and out tech play, where I don't need my production house. With my classic, let's say, my own social media, like, we have verified handlers, right? As we speak, there are about 200 million reach, right? Now today, we are using it more like a pull. I'm using it only for when somebody throws a muck at me, how do I control that? And I'm just doing all my online reputation management more from a pull. How can I use it for a push? Can I look at some short video, like, there are some classic sports things which are always, always associated with us. Can I do something there? There are some classic properties that we own. Can I create some short things and create moments, right? The biggest celebrity, right? His birthday is around the corner, right? Can I make some very classic things about him and push it to the social media? Look at what kind of viral things that it can create, leave alone me going and disrupting in the other. Right? So those are some of things. Right now, do I want to put $1 to it? No, right? Like I was just having a conversation. Initially, let it be a very menial dollars coming in. Then let's talk about millions of dollars, and it will follow automatically. So we will go there. I don't want to put a timeline because the minute you put a timeline, then you're always under time pressure. Create a platform, create this fan following, create this. Let the tail wag the dog, right? Let first create that, and then let these smaller things start saying that, okay, guys, you can actually do much larger. Maybe a different route. I think, good or bad, this is the approach that we thought we'll take.
Absolutely. And therefore, Indra, coming to you, and I think one of an important aspect of any big technology upheaval is the fact that it becomes real only when there is a huge techno commercial happening, right? So let's say in 2016, all of India step jumped its entire activity thanks to the Geo launch, when suddenly voice became free and data became kind of really maximized. We suddenly talked of internet users in the in the tens of millions, as opposed to earlier being a finite few, or even back in time when the Aadhaar laid the foundation of the India stack. So strictly in a techno-commercial sense, how do you see Web3 kind of disrupting the manufacturing economy? So where do you see maximized use cases outside of the steel industry, obviously, in which you're part of? Where do you see the big leaps coming in?
So I think most of the manufacturing companies in India operate in 4 principles. So one is definitely maximization of EBITDA. The second will be the working capital. How can we reduce the working capital, make your balance sheet linear, lean? The third part will be the whole investments that are trapped into your cycle. And fourth part is your operating expense, or the fixed costs that are necessary to run your operations. Now, if you see these 4 value drivers, and if I try to link with some of the use cases that we have done, as well as let's say any of the other manufacturing companies will do, definitely I can give you a couple of examples. Let's say when we are talking about our blast furnace operation, we are actually converting the raw iron ore into the molten metal, right? So basically you are reducing the oxygen from Fe2O3 to pure Fe. Now, when you are doing it, you are actually putting a lot of set points and a lot of parameters that you are trying to control with your knowledge, with the operator knowledge. Now that knowledge varies from the experience of the operator. Now those experiences perhaps are trapped into your historical data, which has been operated by somebody who has really known the process at that point of time, but then he has retired and no more in the system. Now how can you trap that experience from the historical data using AI, and then use Gen AI to train the operator so that the person can run the blast furnace not only in the best operating region, but then you have to also think on the sustainability angles, that maybe we can reduce the coking coal, which is the major source for your carbon footprint. That can be also brought down. So it has to be thought in a problem of optimization, where AI and Gen AI will be helping us again to improve our productivity, but this time it is directly going to improve either the throughput, or reduce your inventory, or maybe reduce or repurpose the people from that particular section of the plant to the other section of the plant. Because I am a strong believer of technology is not going to take away your work, but it is just going to repurpose yourself. You have to reskill yourself. So I think there will be many other use cases, but this is one, I think, which will be cutting across the questions what you have asked.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So it kind of really goes across industry. And then coming to you, Rama, in the context of your role as the chief of innovation in GMR, what do you see as the next breakthrough uses in the context of Gen AI?
Sure. I think before I go there, just kind of something that Raj said stuck with me. And I don't know if you guys have seen the synthetic video of J-Lo doing the Virgin Voyager promotion. I mean, that's like a classical case of the brand person herself being there and then kind of demonstrating synthetic video of how it can be used. And it's a real challenge for all the parties involved. But I think the good part is they have put it out there and said, you know what, this is what is possible, right? Now go figure. So I think it's a great challenge where tech, especially for Raj and Co, like, I think he's got his hands full and he's trying to figure, and he's playing a middle game between the tech guys on one side and the marketing honchos on the other. And taking a cue from that, I think today all of us are experimenting with synthetic video. I mean, we are looking at it as a layering of synthetic video plus conversational AI and trying to meshing the two and trying to figure more practical scenarios of how can I glean nuggets of gold from my enterprise trove of data that has been there of all kinds. And we have done a whole bunch of from data lakes to whatnot, and we have not got value. So I think eventually, I think the private GPT or an enterprise class LLM probably is kind of getting there, solving the problem for us. And we are looking at least like half a dozen startups who can help solve, co-create a product for us. So we are extremely excited. And we believe, and I think has, like he was mentioning, that either, I mean, the gravy lies in the deep embeddings and the vectorized database, where it kind of, allows you to kind of find some of those sweet spots. But to me, I think it is not going to be one model. It's going to be a culmination of multiple different models. One which is ingrained in a vertical industry fully, with the local data, like plunged together with an open GPT model where it has open access to data. And I think he gave a good example of a diode where you don't necessarily need to kind of, be worrying about guardrails and your data going out, but you are feeding off the internet, getting value inside rather than throwing data out. So there are various different ways to kind of be more creative and get the value of the likes of OpenAI on one side, a private GPT on the other, mesh the two. Third, have your own conversational neural network on the other thing with deep embeddings. And you may have a solution that nobody has got till now. We're getting you all the answers that is present in your company, right? So I think we may be able to solve that faster at a very rapid pace. So I think that's the reality. And we want to look at practical cases where it gets value to our employees, gets value to business stakeholders, and we are seeing either efficiency or newer revenue play.
Fantastic. And the perfect segue to bring Vatsal in. And therefore, Vatsal, in the context of what he's saying, the fact that a lot of startups who are doing cutting edge work, can perfectly aggregate into what larger companies are looking at the borders of innovation. 100x we see having a line of sight to various of these startups. Like you said, you guys began investing in the space back in 2015 in 8 years. To what extent are you seeing the smoothness of integration where these guys can add value? And also given the fact that we're moving up the technology curve. Let's say in India, thanks to, let's say, the digital stack, we've got our Aadhaar in place. We've seen the efficacy of how the data layer has been used, ranging from, let's say, DigiYatra, DigiLocker. We saw the whole Covaxin thing moving seamlessly. How will this play up into the entire ecosystem?
Well, hopefully with events like these, I get to meet CIOs and evangelize them to work with startups more. But obviously, it's a function of enterprise readiness and enterprises doing the digital push. But we have to understand that almost every single enterprise in India now has a digitization mission internally, right? That's why we have all these CIOs on ground today, on stage today. Working with startups is definitely tough. It's tough for enterprise as well because startups have a very different mindset. Their pace of execution, they're okay with things breaking, whereas enterprises need things to be there, right? Okay, things can't break, it has to work in production. And it's tough for entrepreneurs as well. From a Web3 perspective, I think we're a ways off. Before Web3 startups will directly be able to work with enterprises, because in general there's just a lot of uncertainty with the industry. Private chains are already being used, as GMR has been using them for DigiYatra and all, but those will be more bespoke solutions and not public products built on public chains, right? I'm not seeing that happening anytime soon. AI seamlessly integrates because of rapid cloud adoption within enterprise as well. AI does, I think, seamlessly integrate into existing processes, and all enterprises want to kind of look into optimizing their workflows, optimizing their costs, reducing it, and operating, increasing insights. So definitely see a lot of opportunity there. For example, one company we've invested is called Data Sutram, right? So they are focused on only data and analytics as a service for BFSI, right? And that's what they do. And some of the largest BFSI, banks and financial companies in India today use them. And they do open data sharing with Data Sutram. They access data from Data Sutram and draw a lot of insights, right? Again, Swasthya as an example, right? Large businesses like Tata Memorial Hospital is using Swasthya AI for cancer care today, right? So we're definitely seeing a lot more adoption on the AI front than we're seeing on the Web3 front, but that makes sense because the Web3 front is it's a much larger leap of faith for enterprises to take.
Do you see a little bit of a drop in this whole excitement around the metaverse? At one time, it was considered like the next holy grail, right? Everyone and his uncle wanted to kind of, create their own little metaverses experiences. And I think to some extent, the hype's kind of tapered off. Do you see that as well?
Yeah, there's definitely a correction. I think it's for the best. I think it's the direction the industry is in is correct. It's just that it was a bubble and it burst. But there's still a lot of innovation. I mean, if it wasn't an opportunity, you wouldn't see Apple coming out with its own VR headset, right? Which is like a big positive sign for the ecosystem. So it's still definitely a big opportunity and a lot of work happening. But it's just a correction and a consolidation phase, right? That, happens with every industry. There's a lot of hype, it consolidates, and then there's a lot of hype again. So, yeah, but not, if I may, Lloyd, I have actually a question because, my fellows here talked a lot about how they're integrating Web3 and AI into their processes. Now, you might have seen, for example, in Hollywood, there are two strikes happening right now. There's the writer's strike and the actor's strike, where actors are saying, okay, these guys are taking our likeness and just using AI to remake our movies as is without us, and they don't want to pay us, right? And I'm sure while you're using DigiYatra to streamline the process for so many customers, that's probably going to take a hit on somebody's livelihood. How are you guys seeing that as playing out, right? Do you see AI hurting that while it profits for the business? Do you see it hurting the human resource part?
I don't think it's anything new, right? I think if we just traverse back in time like Steven Spielberg, when internet came, mail came, this came, everybody said that, this is going to take away the jobs. And I see this as another blur. I think, yes, there is a strikes. And, the other way of looking at it is that, okay, can I take some of these and start giving some of creation work and give it back to the same Hollywood? Some of the Hollywood producers will be happy doing that. So the economy starts defining or redefining. My humble belief is that the water will find its level. I think, we are in that stage of, like he said, not just the uncle, even grandpa wanted a digital avatar and wanted to dress up what all he wouldn't have done in the past, right? So all that is also the hype phases. I won't say it is over. I think it is just reverberating and, it is still, I have a feeling that it will find. I don't think there is a direct answer, but the history says that course corrections will happen through the passage of time.
Rama?
Great question. And I think the answer is, at least on the DigiYatra and some of the tech front, I think it helps reduces fatigue and for people who are overworked. So in fact, jobs are not reduced in our case, in this case at least. They are now doing a better work more efficiently because now they have to focus on what they really should focus on, right? And let machines do what they do best. So they are now repurposed to doing bigger and better things, what they were supposed to. And when you have lot more people like standing, you just kind of wish wash. So you're neither doing justice to what you're supposed to do. So you rather kind of have less people and do things better, right? So I think, and now I think the good part is, I think for all of us here, people even at the ground level, even blue collar workforce today understand the value of tech. And there is a lot more like understanding to work with us to support. And that fear is somehow like dissipated away or it's like a Tina factor. There's no alternative, right? So you better kind of, adopt, move forward, support, and learn where from here. So I think we are seeing a lot more of that play out.
It's so interesting. I mean, just as a small pointer, that India is a techno optimist, whereas the West is all techno pessimist, right? Oh, AI is going to take our jobs. We're all saying, okay, this is great. It helps us do much, much better things in life, right? I think it's such a phenomenal outlook
So
for us.
just a point to add here, and maybe we can take the audience also into the gamut of the discussion. So I read a book called Origin. So how many of you have read the book Origin? Can you please raise your hand? Only one? Okay, maybe you should read it. And the book is written by the famous novelist Dan Brown, the writer of Da Vinci Code. And in the Origin book, what he has stated in 2017, we are actually expressing it right now. Because the AI assistant called Winston, when we are trying to find the answer, is like where we have come from and where we are going. This is the two basic questions any human being asks. कहाँ से आए हैं and कहाँ जाएंगे. So now today's fiction is, I think, tomorrow's technology. And that's where, at that particular inflection point, we are. So,
Yeah, I just going to come back to a very good point that Vatsal made about the strikes currently on in Hollywood. And just for the last segment and quickly wanting your comments, I think there is an interesting dilemma that Gen AI throws in a web world, where there are issues about ethics and the need for kind of policy guardrails, right? Very simply put, some of you will remember a year and a half back, Cadbury did a much acclaimed campaign, or Mondelez as the company is called, where they used Shah Rukh Khan, right? Where he talks about you could pick up your Cadbury gift hamper at the nearest store, and that was customized to a micro level, right? So if you're in Udaipur, then they would mention a store right in your vicinity, because they used AI technology in a sense to actually use the same persona, which was actually Shah Rukh Khan with his permission, to actually then repurpose it and give it different names, right? So what AI can do is real time have a celebrity speak out your brand across the country to 1 million stores, if you may. With this comes the issue of the fact that a lot of this can be misused, right? As long as it's with your permission, and you're Shah Rukh Khan and you sign a deal with a big brand and the brand says we're going to use you to make 100,000 commercials, we'll shoot one, but we'll repurpose it with different store names, that's fine. And therefore, each of you a quick question, do you see the need for developing some kind of a self-regulation, some kind of an ethical code so that this doesn't become rampant and gets misused, right? One of the obverse sides of the great positive story on Gen AI is the world of deepfakes, right? You don't want to see a video of yourself in the public domain doing crazy things or saying stupid things, right? That could in a moment make or break your career. So what are your quick thoughts? And maybe Rama, I want to kickstart with you. What do you think? Do you think the industry and there's to be some kind of regulation code, while at one level water finds its own level, before it finds its own level it can drown a few people? So quick thoughts.
I doubt the avatar or the synthesized video will do a worse job than what I am doing, so I am okay. But yeah, I think on a serious note, I think we have our work cut out. I mean, especially for Raj, I think really feel for him. Maybe he's already using it in his backyard, we don't know. So I think it's a great challenge, but I think we find a way to kind of figure things out, right, one way or the other. And I think I could not have said it better, Vatsal said it better, that we are so like a techno-optimist type of a country, and we figure out a way to use it and figure out, for lack of better word, doing a Mandavli, right? Figure out a win-win scenario for both. So all parties sit, we'll figure out a way of how to slice the cake and ensure everybody figures value. I think we are great at that as a country, because we have started from the point where we had less and we are now kind of enjoying having more. So we kind of have that roots in that. So I'm pretty confident that we'll figure out a way, whether it is government, the regulatory body, the private parties, and whether it is media, OTT and us. I think we'll kind of get to it faster than some of the Western countries. They look at us to kind of, a solution that they can copy back.
No, so having said which, I'm going to push you in the corner a little bit on this, Rama, is that, let's say in the context of GMR, right, we talked about the DigiLocker. Now, I have friends who will not DigiLocker, the DigiYatra. I have friends who will not consciously use DigiYatra because they fear for their privacy, right? Why should, a facial recognition tool know and have me on record, right? On the positive side, it's good for DigiYatra to let me enter Delhi airport without a CISF guard. It helps me go through security without any manual interface. I mean, I certainly have to go metal free. And ideally, it should help me get into the aircraft. So far, so good. And in the real world, DigiYatra should be able to know that I'm traveling to Bangalore. So 2.5 hours later, I need a taxi there and my end destination is, Electronic City or whatever. So far, so good. What I don't want is DigiYatra to also be telling people who should not know my Bangalore trip.
Right.
So why should somebody get to know? And therefore, who draws the line? Right. So is somebody telling GMR that you have no right to give this data? But you're sharing the data. You're putting it in the cloud, right? And the concessionaire Fairfax at Bangalore airport knows about it. So what happens then?
So I'll answer that. I'll clarify that. So one, I think for people who think that, their privacy is at stake because of DigiYatra, I mean, probably they did not know where the camera existed before. There are 3,000 odd cameras in the airports, right? So for all the security reasons, I mean, that's already kind of, table stake and gone. Now we are trying to kind of give you value back with the same technology for your convenience, right? So I think that's point one. The second point, thanks for that. I think somebody loved my point. So I think point number 2 is the system right now is extremely wall guarded in terms of the data, the usage. And it doesn't even go to the cloud. All of the things is local data based on the airport, and it is time guarded. And you can actually disable it on a per transaction or a per travel basis. So it is extremely wall guarded from a privacy and security. The data does not even go from a dial to a dial or whatever, right? From one airport to the other. Technically, you can open up and you can create federation if we are all comfortable with data sharing, and that's where it is on a blockchain. Great use case for blockchain, and we can open it up for for the betterment of everybody if all parties come together. And I'm pretty confident that airports, airlines, governmental authorities will come together to use it for the right things with enough security in play.
Fair enough. So respect that, and thanks for clarifying, and that's quite gratifying. But I think to your point about the blockchain is that in the context of DigiYatra, you explicitly give permission to the airport to get your imagery, right? And they have the data for those 3 or 4 hours of your travel, which is valid, as opposed to cameras that capture you anyway.
Exactly.
But those are unethical. I can sue the guy who's using my picture unethically. I can't sue DigiYatra because I have, when I've uploaded my boarding pass, consciously given permission.
So you consciously accept, and for the duration of it, you can withdraw that if required, and you don't even need to use DigiYatra. Use your colloquial way, your old age way, right? So all options are with you, and you decide to come into the system by sharing for that period of time. Yeah.
Sorry, you want to add something to that?
Yeah, I think,
Raj?
I mean, especially from the media, right? I think, when we originally started with even linear, you would have seen, we all have grown up, right? You can't even see any scenes where, where you feel delicate, right? So then came the linear revolution, and, things are changing, generation gap. Then came something called an IBF, right? The Broadcast Federation. The same way, like when OTT come on, I mean, trust me, the logic they said, no, it is not for the family. You can view it individually. We are giving you rating. Okay, it still doesn't solve the thing, right? Now, the point what I'm trying to say is that you cannot take a stick and say that you can't do. It's like somebody was also saying that you can't stop an internet, right? You can't stop a Gen AI. I mean, if you're doing, the things will still happen, like a dark web, right? So it will happen. So it best is to regulate. And I think, even though MIB came up, I think couple of, if I'm not mistaken, maybe 1.5 years back, they came up with an hand kind of an approach, OTT needs to be, all that happened. Then finally what they did, they said, let's get to a self-regulated, right? I think as you call it a corporate social responsibility or the bigger enterprise responsibility, I think it is time for these larger corporates and enterprise to define these framework. What's a ethical framework on which we all need to work together. I think once it comes up as an industry federated framework, then the smaller things will automatically fall in its place. It becomes a peer pressure, and I think that's the way to go.
Vatsal, you had a couple of things.
Yeah, I just wanted, the larger question for me in this is not how we're using AI models. It's more who owns those AI models. Today, most of these large models are, black boxes owned by large corporations, barred by Google, GPT, by OpenAI, Stable Diffusion by Stability. And we have no clue what goes behind those models, right? How are those models working? Sometimes we find instances of racism by those models, but we have no chance of solving for those, right? So I believe that's where the confluence of Web3 and AI does come into play, where I believe over time what we'll do is we'll have models developed in an open source model, right? So we'll have thousands of developers contributing to how the model should be shaped, how it should be evaluated, etc. Open sourced, hosted on chain, on the
Language
Web3,
agnostic.
hosted on the Web3. Like Ethereum is a decentralized storage or decentralized compute platform, right? So hosted on Ethereum, anybody can run it, anybody can see what the output for a particular input is. You don't like it, you change it, you contribute. And you can also voluntarily share your data through this whole ecosystem of Web3, right? You can control how much data is given, how much not. You get paid for sharing it, for using it, getting it used to train, right? So I think that's where one real confluence comes.
So that's a perfect note to end the discussion. Just quickly to summarize, I think for the folks in the room, I think quickly what we had talked about is the evolution of Web 1.0, which was really company controlled, where company put out information, and as an individual we could seek that information, going to their website. Web 2.0 was really all about interactivity, right? The fact that there were communities now, right? Through large social networks, we could talk, we could interact with people across. And in a sense, Web 3.0, whereas the focus is on the individual. It's all about immersion, where you then become part of it, but you also have the ability to, in a sense, own and control your data and monetize your data. And we're still in that process, but a great discussion, and thank you, and fabulous perspectives. I know we don't have time for questions directly at this session, but some of us are going to be around for a little while longer for the awards ceremony. So if you have questions, feel free to shoot. This was a great panel. Thank you, Indra. Thank you, Raj.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vatsal. And thank you, Rama. And over to you guys, BW.